This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Friday, May the 2nd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams, he's producing the Come On With It edition of the show. So if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So here we are now, I think 98 days out from the Canada Summer Games, and women's baseball will make its debut in this Games. Long overdue, I would suggest. And remember, just put it back out there, Jada Lee made history in the last Canada Summer Games, becoming the first female to play on the boys' baseball team. And as a result, the ball she threw for her first pitch and her jersey are in the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. How about that? Teenager Jada Lee. Was she about 19 now, I guess? Something like that. Anyway, so baseball, women's coming to town. Let's check in Dallas-Fort Worth at the World Under-18 Hockey Championships. Travis Crickard, St. John's native, and his coaching staff lead Canada into the semis this afternoon against Slovakia. Go get them. And for NHL fans, so relief for the Oiler and Maple Leaf fans. Both teams advanced to round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. This date, 1967, gets thrown in the face of Toronto Maple Leaf fans all the time. It's one of the easy go-to, low-hanging fruit insults that fans of other teams use. The Leafs last won the Cup on May the 2nd of 1967. There's only 13 players from that team still alive. And it's the oldest team to ever win the Stanley Cup. Average age was over 30. They had 4 players over 40. So the Leafs, I know they got the parade route ready to roll, and I'm not cheering against the Leafs. I hope they do okay. Bunch of my Leaf fan buddies, they're quite excited, and I'm going to keep watching, so there you go. All right, this is a great story. And good on Steve Hodder and anyone else who's behind making this happen. So a bunch of players that did not make the cut to participate in the Royal Newfoundland Regiment Memorial Hockey Tournament, they went out to see who might be interested in taking a trip to Europe. Who wouldn't be? So now they've got a team assembled to head it off to Europe to play in a tournament in Brussels. Teams from the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Austria, France, as well as 3 exhibition games. Also, they've been paired up with members of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, and they're going to take a tour of some of the commemorative sites in Europe while they're there, which is a trip of a lifetime. So good on Hodder, safe travels, and have a bit of fun to everyone who gets a chance to participate in that tournament. What a great idea that is. Oh, and this one has nothing to do with anything real, but if you've ever been to a Major League Baseball game, one of the best parts of the game, for me anyway, on top of having your hot dog and enjoying the ball, is the 7th inning stretch, where they sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game. 118 years ago today, in 1908, Take Me Out to the Ball Game was registered for a U.S. copyright. What's fascinating about that tune, which is a great jingle, it was written by Jack Norworth and Albert von Tisler. They had never been to a baseball game before they wrote that song. And so 118 years ago today, and of course, it's the unofficial anthem of Major League Baseball when you go to the ballpark. All right, I want to think back to yesterday and what I'll call a passionate call we had from a first-time caller named Gerald. And it was about the recreational food fishery. He asked this fundamental question: why is it that we're not allowed, until DFO says we're allowed, to go out and get a cod? It's a good question. It really, truly is. I've heard from commercial harvesters since saying, look, they support expanding the food fishery, the recreational food fishery, but they don't support a free-for-all. Gerald's onto something. And inside his passion was things like saying, adhering to these types of rules just kind of makes us look and feel subservient and servile. And why that is back in my mind this morning, after lunch yesterday, I went to get some gas. The person on the other side of the pump said, I heard Gerald's call, and made specific mention of it. Then I went to the grocery store, and I'm standing in line to pay for my products, and someone behind me says, I heard Gerald's call today. So obviously he struck a tone or hit a chord with people listening to the program yesterday. So the fundamental question is, why do we have to wait? Why do we have to be told we're allowed? Now, a free-for-all could be problematic, but if it was, for instance, say Canada Day, right through Labor Day, whenever you like, go out and get one. Even if we had trip limits remain in place. But anyway, it obviously resonated with folks because the emails were buzzing in hand over fist. 2 specific conversations about that one call. So, Gerald, thanks for doing that. All right. During the federal election campaign, we heard from the Conservatives on homelessness. And they said they were going to expand police powers to disband the tent cities that have popped up around the country. And it's not new. The fact of the matter is the police already had all the powers they needed to do things like that. Well, how do we know? Because it's about 1 year ago today, or maybe it's the 3rd of May, where the police went down to disband what they call Tent City for Change at the Colonial Building. They touted safety concerns and the fact it was so close to Bannerman Park itself and a propane tank that caused a fire to burn down someone's tent. So things like that. Violence, drugs, that's what we were told at the time. So it was quite the scene to see the police go in with hazmat suits to tear down the tents and to empty the place out. 1 year later, I think we have a bit of a misguided thought and conversation about homelessness, because even if we talk about the tent cities, because people might refer to them as an eyesore, but the fact of the matter is we actually had couples living in these tents and tent cities, because if they went into emergency shelters, they'd quite likely, if not absolutely, be separated. We can talk about how and what the circumstances are that lead to someone being homeless, but what's missing in the conversation is we can disband tent cities because people think that they shouldn't belong in these types of parks. It's a potential to bring more violence closer to where people in this case are having some recreational opportunities in Bannerman Park. But the fact is, you tear down the tent, it doesn't solve anything. They simply go somewhere else. So lost in the shuffle here. And when the government, dealing with these issues, and it really got some keen focus because initially the tents were set up right across the street from the Confederation Building, we hear some measures that are being taken. For instance, the government's decision to lease for 3 years the Comfort Inn, 106 Airport Road, now they call it Horizons 106. Will that be deemed a success as a transitional home after this 3-year lease is up? I'm not entirely sure, because I'm not really sure how we measure success, with how many people get transitioned out or whatever the case may be, and whether it be increased police presence in that area so that the residents of feel like it's being taken seriously, and some of that has happened. So we're happy to speak to residents up and around Airport Heights. And yes, how do we actually get down to understanding not only the root causes, but as opposed to simply tearing down a tent, the tent pops up somewhere else. That person's issue has not been settled or solved. So in addition to that, like we were talking about the amount of money out of the contingency fund to be spent on children in care, not child care, children in care with complex needs, and we hire private companies. $420 million over the last 6 years to fewer than a dozen companies. Our emergency shelters, only province in the country that decides to spend provincial government money, which is our money, to private companies, as opposed to taking the responsibility themselves. So there's a lot to that, but it was 1 year ago that Tent City for Change was taken down or disbanded. Has anything changed pragmatically for the better since? I'll leave it up to you. All right. So the biggest part of the tourism season is just about upon us. Folks in Labrador, once again, are feeling left out. And this is regarding the government's new arrangement with PAL Airlines to create an intra-provincial loop, St. John's, Gander and Deer Lake. I don't know how popular those routes will be, but I guess remains to be seen. I probably won't have to buy a ticket to travel via air to any of those towns, but Labradorians, once again, wondering what's next for them. And it's an excellent question. We know what the issues are and the cost issues with getting in and out of Labrador. It's not just for the residents, but it just also makes it difficult for people who may consider taking a job, whether it be as a healthcare professional or a teacher or what have you, when it's so costly to get in and out. Same thing with housing in Labrador. We hear from the companies, the mining companies talk about expansion and, well, the government's got to do more about housing. I would suggest the companies have to do as much as government about housing. The camps, the fly-in, fly-out, it's fine for jobs and it's fine for the tax base, but it does not bring upon maximum economic benefit to the region. So I think the companies really have to do more than they currently do regarding housing, because it's to their benefit. The ability to secure workers with not having them flying in and flying out, because they do play a role in maximizing benefit, economically speaking, to the area. And on that note, we've had a couple of calls this week about the Memorandum of Understanding at the Upper Churchill, Gull Island, the 2 transmission projects. One of the big things for Labrador inside this was the quadrupling of the recall block of power to about 1,100 kilowatts coming from Muskrat Falls, or megawatts coming from the Upper Churchill, for economic opportunities, expansion of commercial properties, mining notably. So anything on that front you want to take on? Let's go. All right, where's that story? back to the air for a second. The airlines play hardball. You know, my job as a customer of the airline is to book a ticket and pay for a ticket. Show up on time, and that's kind of all that should be incumbent on me. Everything else is up to the airline. And when there are things that the airlines will say are out of the control, weather and mechanical issues, what have you, people have the ability to file a formal complaint with the Canadian Transportation Agency. And albeit this is a rare occurrence, the airline can take that ruling and challenge it in federal court. And that has happened, not all that frequently, but it shouldn't be the case in the first place. So 4 years later, after a couple had filed a complaint with CTA, got a $2,000 ruling from them, Air Canada took them to court, over $2,000. All right. So the airlines should be able to reserve the right to challenge rulings, no doubt about that. But should we change the regulations here? As opposed to taking me or Dave Williams or you to court based on a CTA ruling, shouldn't the airline take the Canada's Transportation Agency to court as opposed to me? I think so. I mean, just think about it. The whole concept of the big guy, and in this case airlines, able to wear you down and wait you out. How many people, when threatened with a court challenge, are going to say, I don't have the time or the effort or the money to go down this path? 4 years later, Air Canada withdraws. And why? They say they felt bad for them. Oh, yeah. I'm sure you do feel bad for them 4 years later. So I think that we have to change those regulations. Take CTA to court, not me. All right, sticking with the air for a second. So, yet another court date missed by the Diamond Group of Companies representatives, lawyers, and or Mr. Diamond himself. That $2.4 million lawsuit over the runway lighting that was installed. The bill had not been paid. And, of course, the lawyers, they wanted out because they weren't getting paid either. So I think it's safe to say we've arrived at a place where there's not going to be any advancement of the huge promises or pledges made by Mr. Diamond back in 2021. Nothing's happened. Nothing's come to pass. What's the mechanism? He can deal with his own legal issues, but what's the mechanism to take that airport back? Even if he did cover some $1 million of liabilities. And of course, he's had a $2 million court ruling against him from the lottery winner who helped fund Mr. Diamond's ability to take on the liabilities. But it can't just sit there. Now, is there some suitor in the offing who wants to take on operations to try to do what they can to bring some more activity back to Stephenville and surrounding area? I don't know. But I do know that what we currently have in place, I don't know what the right word is here, but let's use a few words. It's a waste of time. It seemingly is nothing more than a waste of time. Nothing's going to advance. So when we know that, and even with the $500,000 goes to the town of Stephenville, they can deal with that legal issue on the side. But that airport has to be back into the hands of the airport authority and or the town or the province, whatever the case may be, to see if there's anybody out there who has a more serious plan and financial backing to do it. I'm not trying to just badmouth Carl Diamond specifically. I'm more concerned with the airport. Anyway, you want to talk about it? We can do it. All right. So here's a cautionary tale. It's really unfortunate that we've got to talk about the scams that are out there bilking millions of dollars annually from Canadians, because people, now probably more than ever, it's always been the case where people are conscientious about price point and trying to save money where they can, and this one is about insurance. So this poor young fella from St. John's, his auto insurance policy was up for renewal. So, like many, he shopped around. So he was online looking for someone who would give him a quote, and he got a bargain rate, $180 a month. Other quotes as a new driver were just about double that. But when he sat back and thought about it and acknowledged some of the red flags, like the email address that was very similar to a real insurance company's email address with one letter missing, and then all those things with had to make an e-transfer of however much money. So he figured it out, and thankfully he didn't fall prey. But this entity or person, who they can't find anymore, is what they call a ghost broker. Again, just in the way of being cautious here, if it feels and sounds too good to be true, as they say, it probably is. So a ghost broker for insurance, I'm not even sure I knew that was a thing until I read that news story this morning. But don't fall prey, because there's someone going to rob the eyes out of your head if we're not careful. All right. See a news story this morning also for the province and the incoming premier to keep the pressure on the federal government regarding the oil and gas industry, emissions caps and otherwise. It remains to be seen exactly what the future holds for oil and gas in this province or around the country. For the first time since the election, Prime Minister Carney will address the media. On what front, not entirely sure. I bet he's going to make mention of the dental care plan, because as of today, people who are eligible, that's a net family income of $90,000 or less, from the ages of 55 to 64, they can apply. In the coming weeks, we're told they'll expand that for the rest of the country who are actually eligible for the dental care plan. But I would imagine there'll be questions about Alberta's separation, the oil and gas industry, and whatever else under the sun. And I read an interesting election analysis that said when the Liberals finished with 169 seats, 3 short of the majority of 172, is that they're actually only 611 votes short of actually forming that majority. 2 Ontario ridings and 1 in Nunavut, adding up to 611 votes. But we'll hear from the Prime Minister. So anything on that front, whether it be the potential for a reimagined carbon tax or anything else, happy to talk about it here today if you're so inclined. Today is the last day for the 14th Premier of the province, Andrew Furey. Today's his last day in office. The Liberal convention kicks off, and they will indeed select, under 14,000 people, will be responsible for selecting who will be the 15th Premier. So whether you want to reflect back on the 4.5 years under Premier Furey, I see him make mention, and these are questions that are automatic to outgoing politicians, not only about what they say they've achieved, but what they regret. One was the handling of the Innu Nation, and that was about the rate mitigation issue. So that was the last one, the $5.2 billion. $1 billion loan guarantee, $1 billion of an additional loan, and $3.2 billion coming from Hibernia revenues. That one. And he also mentions he regrets the way the snow crab protest was handled. So those are 2 interesting things to point to. So we can take that on. Andrew Parsons, most recently the Minister of Energy, I will say, I can't remember the entire title. Industry, Energy and Technology, I think, is the actual ministerial portfolio. Andrew Parsons stepping down. His resignation is effective immediately. 13, 14 years in politics for Andrew Parsons, and we wish him good luck, and we wish Premier Furey good luck. It'll be the first time since 1999 where there'll be a non-Parsons elected in Burgeo-Lapoil. Of course, Andrew followed his father's footsteps in that particular I was going to say riding because I'm thinking federal, but in that district. So, of course, his father is Kevin. So we wish them well as they move on. If you want to take on anything under those 2 envelopes, we can do it. All right. Yeah, although I will say, for many, people thought Andrew Parsons might be the leader in waiting. I think that was a pretty popular thought out there. So anyway, anything in the political world or anything in the social world, it's Friday. I'm in the mood to talk about whatever you're interested in talking about. But I will give an arts shout out here. I've said this before, and here it comes again. The film Skeet, produced by Nick Sexton, Mary Sexton, which I saw a couple of Saturdays ago at the mall, is a tremendous accomplishment in cinema. It really is. Sometimes when we say local, people think it'll be less than. Don't be so foolish. This movie is 100% worth your time and effort. It's been held over at the Avalon Mall at Cineplex until the 8th of May. It's also going to be in Corner Brook at the Cineplex May 3rd and 4th. 1 screening each day at 4 p.m. Seats are limited. Take it from me, and I don't give a whole lot of recommendations like this on many fronts, but you will not be disappointed. It's a very interesting look at life where we live and the changing face of community and personal struggle. It's 100% worth it. So please go see it, and if and when you do, give me your review, because we got to support the arts. We are on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. How we doing on the phone, Dave? Let's get the phone rip-roaring. Why? Because your opinion is every bit as important, more important than mine. We're taking a break, and then we're coming back. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin on top of the board. Jean, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Patty. This is Jean calling, and I was listening to your Open Line yesterday, and well, I was too late when I got in on the call, so I had to be transferred to us this morning.
Okay.
I listened to Gerald, and I'm 100% for that man, because he should be able to be allowed to go out and catch a cod. And like, he put his time, I guess he's a pensioner, I think he is. And I don't see anything wrong with anybody that would like to have a card on their table. And I agree 100%. Go for it, Gerald. And, do what you can to help the people see that, they should not be left out. Now, that's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, and just on that one, even if we just change some of the trip limits and stuff, so as opposed to, 3 hands can go out or bring in 5 each, if you expanded it all the way, and say, for instance, I was allowed to go out today and get 2 or whatever number of people select, but as opposed to this highly restrictive opportunity to get a card, it was amazing to me with all the calls we get. 2 places I went, gas station and grocery store yesterday, 2 different people made specific reference to that call.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I listened very careful to him, and I thought he had he did well. What he was saying was correct, and he worked hard all his life. He put money into the government. And it's nice that anybody can have a free world, that we can just have a fish or to eat, and a little bit of enjoyment, I guess, too, along with that, right?
Sure.
So that's my opinion on that one. But now I'm going to, for a few minutes, I'd like to touch on the heat pumps. And at my home, I have oil and wood, of course. And I applied for the heat pump because, everybody was saying it's free, but it's not free. I got to pay amount, I'll get a $10,000 grant because it's, I think it's because of the your money and whatever. I'm a senior, and and I do have a bit of money, RSPs, that I have to draw from to help me along the way. And when this is all considered as your income. So, my income won't cover, my heat pump, because I money in the bank, I guess, and whatever. I don't know if there's money in the bank, but your taxes show what you make, put it that way. So anyway, I'll qualify for a partial of that, which is a small grant of $9,000. Now, the rest's got to come out of my own pocket. So I don't know what the deal is. Everybody's saying it's free, but it's not free.
No, there's nothing free. So what's important on these things is the advice that I've been given, because it was solid advice given to me, is when you're entertaining purchasing one of these heat pumps or electric furnace or these types of things, to go through every pot of money that's available out there and what's going to be cash out of pocket for you. Call the company that sells it. I mean, they want your business, so they'll do all the hard work for you. They will look at all the programs. They will break it down to dollars and cents, what the government will cover, what you'll have to cover yourself. Then secondly, you have to make sure that your insurance policy lives up to the way you're going to change the way you heat your home. So call the company that sells it, call the insurance company, and then you'll have all the information in hand before you go ahead and, someone said it's free, and the next thing you know, wait now, how come I have to spend $5,000? What happened to free? So do that before you get into making a purchase.
Sorry, but anyway, I'll dip in there a minute, and I'm gone right through the process, and I know what I have to pay. It's a nice sum of money out of my pocket. It's going to cost me about $10,000 out of my pocket. Because these heat pumps, the government gives you, if you're low income, I guess, you get $18,000 or something. There's a grant out there for that one. But I'm about that, I guess, and whatever. And when my taxes went in, everything is showing. I got $9,000. It seems that I can use from the government, and the rest is up to me. But in saying that, I mean, the government is trying to get you to get clear of oil, which is okay, I guess, whatever. And, if I go and get a hall furnace, my oil furnace is going to cost me about $12,000, probably, for sure, that much. So I don't know. Like I said, you got to, and for to get a furnace, if they want you to take out this oil, well, what choice do you have? They're eventually everybody's going to have to get rid of their oil. That's what it seems.
Yeah, I don't know if we're, like, for instance, I have oil heat at my home. I don't feel like I've been forced to get rid of it, but now I did buy a mini split and really we're quite pleased with it. Our bills have gone down. The cost recovery was less than 3 years. The best feature of that, though, is cooling the home in the summertime. But solid advice, Gene, to make sure people know what they're getting themselves into before they think something's free and then all of a sudden it's $10,000 later.
Yeah, I didn't expect for it to be free. Like I said, I'm a senior living by myself, and it's not. I mean, my husband passed away 15, 16 years ago, and he worked in the mines and stuff, and he tried to save a little bit for a rainy day, which made sense and stuff like that. And I work myself, but the thing is, you've got to use it. Because there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing free. And at my age, 72, you have to start drawing on it anyways.
Absolutely. Gene, I'm glad you made time for the show this morning. Thanks for calling.
Yes, you're welcome, man. You have a good day.
The very same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
One of the controversial issues in the heat pump world is federal politics. So one thing for sure, with all the green initiative pots of money, of which there were several, one thing as a result, not only did that business become quite busy, but the product costs more. It's the classic world of supply and demand. When the companies know demand will be ginned up, lo and behold, the prices go up. That's not gone away. Inside Mr. Carney's announcement on the 8th of April of this year, they talked about inside their housing plan to spend about $1 billion on heat pumps. The conflict, as people point to, is the fact that at Brookfield Infrastructure, of course, where he was the chair, they bought a heat pump company in Ontario called Enercare. And one of their services is heat pump retrofits. So people think that he's just, using what was once a company he was at the helm of with political policy. In October 2024, the Telegraph, London newspaper, said and broke this news, I'll call it, that Mr. Carney was using political connections to personally lobby the British cabinet for heat pump progress. That one is a bit of a flimsy issue because in the private sector, what do you think? If you have political contacts, you're not going to use them to try to promote business? That's what everybody in every business always does forever. When you're in politics, it's a different story. Now, for folks who think that's a distinct conflict that needs to be addressed, another thing to be aware of, there's 3 manufacturers of heat pumps in this country. There's some 29 different products that are out there. So if you think that's an issue and you're worried about the conflict, then don't buy anything from Enercare, I suppose, is the outcome. So I put that out there because people are pointing to it, and understandably so. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the fact that May is Mental Health Month. There is a lot to the conversation. There always is. Join us on the show is the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Newfoundland and Labrador. There's Dr. Chandra Kavanagh. Then Dan's in the queue to talk about food security. We're going to talk about the cost of kids in care, which we brought up earlier. And Leo wants to dip his hook into the water, talk a little food fishery as well. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, NL Chapter. That's Dr. Chandra Kavanagh. Dr. Kavanagh, you're on the air.
Hi, thanks so much for having me back.
Happy to have you on the program. With these awareness weeks and awareness months, they generally speaking come with a theme. And this year's, I think, is pretty important. And it's called Unmasking Mental Health. So in a nutshell, and then I'll get you to expand, obviously, is if I see someone with a broken arm, I just don't see the broken arm. But unfortunately, far too often, if I see or speak with someone with a diagnosed mental illness, then that's what I see. And I don't see past it. Where are we going with this theme?
I think that's absolutely the case, and you're raising a great point. For a long time, we've been talking about awareness. For a long time, we've been talking about stigma. And I think we've come a long way when it comes to those things, but never quite far enough. And I think that with mental health, it's still a deeply misunderstood kind of issue. So this idea of unmasking mental health is seeing, as you say, all sides of the person who might be impacted by mental illness or might have mental health concerns. But I think there's a little more to it than that as well. There's been a lot of conversations that have been happening around neurodivergence, neurodiversity, being a little different, and being allowed to be a little different.
Dr. Kavanagh, I hate to interrupt, but I think we have a compromised phone line, and I really want this message to be heard loud and clear. I'm going to put you on hold, speak with David, we'll see if we can clear it up, okay?
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's do that because this is too important to have that phone line issue. Let's go to line number 2 and say morning, Dan Rubin behind the Food Producers Forum. Morning, Dan. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. It's always so refreshing to hear your common sense comments on various subjects. I love it. I haven't talked to you in a while. I have a few bits of news to share, as I usually do, and then I'd love to have a more open-ended conversation about what things are happening now around the food security issue. So if it's okay, let me share some bits of information.
Fire away.
Okay, so first of all, we're launching a brand new website today, foodproducersforum.com. That's our online encyclopedia of gardening, growing, foraging. A year's work has gone into this beautiful site, and it's far more interactive. It's a place where you can make comments, ask questions, find food. We have maps of where the food is for local purchase. And the second thing I want to say is that I'm very proud of our group that we received an award last night at the City of St. John's Applause Awards. We received the 2024 Community Climate Change Leadership Award, and that's a tribute to the whole team. We've got quite the crew from all over the world working together in our offices on Mount Sion. The third thing I want to do is to invite people who are listening to join us for an open dialogue about food security action taking place this Sunday at noon at the Autism Society Greenhouse on Clinch Crescent in behind the Health Sciences Center. A lot has been going on over the last 6 months, the last year, particularly since we did our survey in 2022. You and I talked about that. We found 6.2 million pounds of food being produced by just 742 farmers and gardeners and foragers that year. So we've built 3 greenhouses this year, 2 root cellars. The project that I lead has been going really well, and it's all very hopeful. But one of the things that we do need to do, and I'm sure you get this, is to get food on the agenda when it comes to the upcoming provincial election. And we're actually we have a team working on legislative tweaks because in many cases, municipalities are stopping people, with the best intentions, mind you, from growing food in their own backyards, stories that you've probably heard. But the main message I want to say is that we're alive and we're working away, and in some places we see food production doubling. What we're working on right now, we're waiting for funding for this, is a food distribution system of food hubs and trucks to move food right across the island. And this year we were able to raise $50,000 and purchase a 25-ton refrigerated truck for Labrador, which is in Goose Bay right now, making runs down the Labrador coast with best quality food brought in from Montreal. So those are my news items. Done.
They're terrific news items. You know, some of the things that hold us back, you mentioned greenhouses. We've got this misconception about what we can and cannot grow in this province, I would suggest, and you've brought that forward in the past. And in the greenhouse world, you know, there's a story from Ontario that I read last week. It was about a greenhouse farm called Haven Greens, I'm pretty sure. So they've got, you know, they're growing leafy greens, whether it be baby lettuce, red and green leaf mixture, spring mixes, spinach, kale, Swiss chard, and the like. But what was also part of that news story that people are probably not really that aware of is 90% of the leafy greens we consume in this country are imported from California and Mexico. 90%. Yep. And just think 90%. About when you go to the store, you see the price point and you see the quality or the lack thereof. That's why.
Yeah, the thing is that we do have hydroponic production here. Greenhouses do work. We're still haunted by the ghost of sprung God. And the common myth, the misinformation, is that we can't grow food here. And as you and I have discussed, here in Pooch Cove, I'm growing grapes and peaches and corn and artichokes and kiwis. And we have sites like let me tell one story. I made a trip down the Burin Peninsula about a month ago. And I was down visiting friends there and connecting with one of our project sites for the Provincial Food Network, the Burin Garden Group. And I was taken out to a farm just close to Golden Sands, run by a fellow named Andrew Warren. And this guy has been farming for 3 years. I said, "Did you grow up on a farm?" He said, "No, I just got into it, and now I love it." And he had all these buildings manufactured from recycled materials, telephone poles and roofing, and we were surrounded by turkeys, like this gaggle of turkeys following us around, and then the goats are following us, and he's got chickens and ducks and quail, and he's got pigs that when you go into the barn, they put their noses up and go waiting to be scratched behind the ears. And they all have names. It's like Dr. Doolittle. He sent us a list of the vegetables he's going to plant down there in soil where he can go down 6 feet before hitting bedrock. It's alluvial soil. He's going to be producing thousands of pounds of food. I thought it was a food desert down there. And that's just a perfect example of what we're able to do. And when it comes to hydroponics, we've recently connected with a man, an investor, who's working hard on turning the old canopy building in the White Hills into leafy green production, working with a company from Ontario. Yeah, there's so much that's possible.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, when the government opens up 64,000 hectares of land for agricultural purposes, that's good news, even though that's moving fairly slowly as far as I can tell. Hydroponics is a pretty significant upfront cost. So if the government wants to do more about food security and understand the hydroponics world, you know, even if we had something in the form of interest-free loans or something to incentivize peppering the landscape with hydroponic greenhouses, I think we'd be way further down the road insofar as food security or insecurity goes.
I think you're right about that, but we also need to note that although the government is doing some great things in terms of the bedding plant program and support, it's very, very difficult for a new farmer to get any form of support. That's what we were told by Andrew Warren down in Buren, that he's had to build these things with recycled materials and his own sweat because he can't get the support. The Crown land that's being made available, some of which is deep forest, some of which is already cleared, is not easy to get a hold of. It's a 4 to 5 year process. So to a great extent, we're making it harder for people, both in their backyards and on farmland, to grow food, and we really need to make it easier. And one of the things that we've run into with our projects and the traveling that I've been doing is places where people are really stepping up, young people taking on farming, learning how to do it, and regaining the skills. And a lot of it is moving in a direction that's very hopeful in terms of climate change because it's regenerative. It doesn't disturb the soil. It uses cover crops and manure rather than chemical fertilizers and pesticides. So enormous opportunities. If we had the proper support and awareness right up into the government, and that's why we did our survey, you know, back in 2012 to show 2022 to show what's possible and already happening. We could move from 80% imported to 80% local in about 3 years. That's what I've learned being out there in the field now.
Dan, as usual, really appreciate the time. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just to say again that we're having this gathering on Sunday at noon at the Autism Society Greenhouse. And if you haven't already been there, check out our website. We're so proud of it. The work that's been done on it by our team is beautiful, and it is totally interactive. And everything you need to know about how to grow onions or whatever, it's right there, foodproducersforum.com. Always a delight to speak to you, Patty.
My pleasure, Dan. Stay in touch.
Thank you. Bye.
All the best. Bye-bye. It's Dan Rubin from the Food Producers Forum. Break time. When we get back, hopefully we have a nice, crystal clear phone line to rejoin our conversation with Dr. Chandra Kavanagh, the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, NL. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's hopefully rejoin on line number 6 the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Newfoundland and Labrador chapter, Dr. Chandra Kavanagh. Dr. Kavanagh, you're back on the air.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully I sound a little better this time.
You sound great, and I appreciate your patience. So I'll restart the conversation so we can hear your point of view. We're talking about the theme of unmasking mental health. And what I said was, you know, if I see someone with a physical injury, I can look past it quite easily. But someone with mental illness, it becomes a bit of a different conversation, a bit of a struggle for some to look past it. Where are we going with the theme?
Yeah, so we started this conversation about the sort of long history of destigmatization and really trying to get more information and more understanding about mental health concerns out there. But I think that the unmasking mental health theme is quite an interesting one because it's about looking at the entire person beyond what might just be a clear mental health issue or a not so clear mental health issue. But there's a little more to it than that. And I think part of that is around the conversation we've had around neurodiversity, neurodivergence, and everybody's brains being just a little bit different. And so that meaning that their behavior is sometimes just a little bit different. And a lot of people can feel a lot of pressure to hide that, to mask their differences, to not show the world that they have, are any bit out of the ordinary. And one of the things that we want to encourage is for people who have mental difference, who have mental health concerns, to feel able to be their authentic selves and feel supported in that.
It's interesting in that I can't put a timeline on it, but at one point in recent history, people who were neurodivergent or were just different, period, and or had a mental illness, they were either one ignored or one pushed into the shadows. And when we kind of changed our tune on that and they were given more awareness, that stigma became different from ignored. It became whether or not they're accepted, which is a different conversation. So how do I, as someone without a diagnosed mental illness, how do I do better in looking past? Give me some advice.
That's a great question, and it actually reminds me of something that really struck me when I was much, much younger and doing my undergraduate. I was working with a person who had autism, and he was an incredibly capable person, but had some challenges. And I remember being at the grocery store, and one of the things that he would request would be to get his change before he was given his receipt. And he would ask for that, very clearly and straightforwardly. It was something that was very important to him. And there were cashiers who would do this, and he would have a great interaction. And there were cashiers who would ignore him or roll their eyes or not listen to his request. And then, unfortunately, he would, feel a bit agitated or have a bad day after that. And I would often think, even as a 20-year-old, is like, come on, guys, can't we just give this guy a break? Like, he asked for something quite clearly, and I know he's a little different, but let's just, help him out. And I think sometimes we need to have that attitude within our community, which is something might not be, perfectly to the social norms, but if it's not harming anyone, if it's not rude, if it's not dangerous, then maybe we can give our fellow community members a little bit of grace and just allow them to be a little bit different and not internally roll our eyes about it.
The unfortunate reality is, for some people, when we talk about accommodations for one segment of society or another, some people think, well, that accommodation reduces my reality. That accommodation takes away from me, as opposed to considering this. Nothing changes for you. Nothing has been diminished. No one's taken anything away from you. We're just adding the same privileges you have to someone else.
And in fact, it might be beneficial.
Sure.
So when we think about things like universal design, for example, we have, cutouts in our sidewalks for people who are mobility impaired, but that benefits so many people. It benefits mothers with strollers. It benefits people with shopping carts. It benefits people who are vision impaired, for example. And so often when we make these little subtle changes, it benefits everyone's lives. So if in the office, you're comfortable to say, this noise level is really bothering me, or the fluorescent lights are really bothering me, that might benefit you, but that actually might benefit a lot of people in your office who've just been quietly living with that discomfort.
You mentioned autism, not just to pick up on that issue alone. I've often wondered, is it helpful or is it unnecessary that when we talk about someone on the spectrum, because if you've met one person on the autism spectrum, you've only met one person on the autism spectrum. It is wide and broad and has so many different impacts. Is it helpful or unnecessary to make references to things like notable people in history that were on the spectrum, whether it be Albert Einstein or Dan Aykroyd or Daryl Hannah or whoever? Is that a helpful part of the conversation? Does it help, quote unquote, normalize or to broaden people's understanding of just how different the spectrum is for different people?
I think that representation definitely matters. So one of the things that we will often think about when we think about this kind of visibility issue is there's like a little saying that goes, you can't be what you can't see. So if you are, a person with autism, so too a person with a mental health issue, so too, a person in a historically disadvantaged category, it can be really hard to imagine a future outside of the few things you've seen. So if the only ever representation you've seen of something something like autism, for example, is Rain Man, then it might be very difficult for you to think of yourself as a successful accountant or as an explorer or as all of the different kind of things you might wish or imagine yourself to be. So I think when we point out these kind of representations, whether it's in media or figureheads, successful people, it's not the entire answer, but it is certainly beneficial for people to be able to see themselves represented.
I've asked for advice as an individual in talking about this particular stigma-related issue. Let's send a message to corporate Canada, because that's also part of the conversation, to be part of the community and active and, employed, gainfully and meaningfully employed is a big part of everyone's life, regardless of your mental well-being, your mental health, or your mental illness. So let's craft a message for corporate Canada.
So I think the message for corporate Canada when it comes to mental health, mental wellness, and acceptance, maybe in its crudest form would be, if you guys like money, there's a lot of opportunity here. So there are so many people out there with differences, but also with incredible strengths. And that's one of the things that I saw when I was a young person working with people with autism is often they will have these incredible strengths and talents. And if only they're given the accommodations that they need to be able to succeed, the amount that they could contribute to a job, to the working world, to a company is absolutely incredible. So I think there is a tremendous unharnessed resource out there that if we can get past some of our stigma as a society, we can really allow these folks to contribute in an incredibly meaningful way, whether that's through the working world or through our community in other ways.
Last one before I let you go, Dr. Kavanagh. So we know that we have residents or patients or people being treated at the new mental health and addictions facility over there on the Health Sciences Complex. How confident are you that, more dignified, bright, modern surroundings is, of course, important when you're being treated and or recovering? How optimistic are you that that's going to change the way we deliver inside the mental health system? Because we talk a lot about delivery inside of the physical health system, and new surroundings are great, but how do you think that's going to change the system?
That's a really great question, Patty, and that's a hard one for me to answer. I am incredibly happy about the new facility. The new facility was absolutely needed. I think there was a lot of thought put into it. I think there was a lot of thought that was put into the aesthetics. One of the things that you'll hear a lot is about the artwork there, about the natural light, and those things are absolutely important. But where I see concerns are in things like the number of beds. I would like to hear from the people working there. Is it a good operational, well-operating place to work in? Not just beautiful, but does it work for the patients, for the healthcare providers? Is it big enough? Are there enough resources? I know there were many conversations that happened when the Janeway was first built that it had almost outgrown itself by the time construction was finished. We didn't predict enough of how much need there was going to be. So those are some of the outstanding concerns I have about that building. It's necessary. I'm glad we're not using the water for it anymore. But I do think we need to think about things like capacity and beyond just the aesthetics of a shiny new building. What do we really need to be able to get people the resources they need to thrive?
Yeah, and we still need to have a better understanding of, with fewer beds, they talk about community outreach, bringing these programs and services to where you live. I haven't fully wrapped my mind around that, but I'm trying. And as usual, I really appreciate your time this morning, Dr. Kavanagh. Anything else before we say goodbye?
Always happy to chat. Visit us at cmhanl.ca for more information about all the things we have going on during Mental Health Week.
Thank you for your time, Doctor.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Dr. Chandra Kavanagh, the CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Newfoundland and Labrador chapter. So that's Mental Health Month, which is now here in May. And, of course, is Volunteer Week. Colin Corcoran from the Community Sector Council is in the queue. Andrew Warren, he's a farmer, got name dropped by Dan Rubin. He's also there. But the first two we're going to get to is Leo Kilty, talking about the food fishery. And then there's a caller picking up on the conversation regarding the cost of children in care. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Leo, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning to you.
Wait until I turns off the radio. We're talking about food fishery. I remember one time, and a long time ago, that if you wanted a fish, you went and got it. You went and jigged the fish. If you wanted a salmon, you saw it in net. If you wanted a lobster, you went and put out the pot. And I mean, say, we own the fish. But now, all of a sudden, it's the Barrys, the Quinlans, or the Sullivans, or whatever, there's so many of them, and we don't own the fish, and we got to go and get down on our knees and beg to get a few fish to eat. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly when things changed. And, you know, someone made a point on the heels of Gerald's call yesterday, and people talk about potential abuses when you say open it up as a so-called free-for-all. There's abuse inside the commercial fishery as well, I would suggest. So I think we've kind of got to figure out a better path forward. I mean, it does seem highly restrictive, even if we try to mimic what's done in other parts of Atlantic Canada and expand it just like, at least to the extent where it is for, say, for instance, in Nova Scotia. So there's a lot left to be desired when it comes to the way we currently handle it.
Yeah, I mean, say, we lost. I mean, say, we gained. There's no doubt about it. I mean, say, I remember I was 13, 14, or 15 when Confederation came in, and I can remember stuff before Confederation. I mean, say, one time, for instance, we had, there was a fisherman's limit, or fisherman's whatever, but we went back a mile from the water, from high water mark, and if you wanted to build a boat or you wanted to build a flake or whatever, you could go in, the fishermen could go in and cut wood, but now that's gone, you know. So it's unreal what we lost to a certain extent. But then again, you take the abuse that the big companies are doing. I mean, say, it's a well-known fact that they're shooting down or going down to shoot thousands of pounds of fish and dumping and in the those talk about them bringing in probably a dump load of crab and dumping it in the you know, it's unreal. There's nobody checking up on them whatsoever. But I mean, say, if you or me, not now, I'm not going to do no more fishing. But if I went out there now, there's somebody there watching me every move I'm making. But I mean, say, they're not. You take, for instance, what's going on down there in the South Coast now with that salmon, whatever they got down there.
Are you talking about the aquaculture industry?
Yeah, the aquaculture, for instance, you know. Something else, I'll tell you that. I mean, see, I don't know. We're after losing a lot. We're after gaining a lot, no doubt with that. I mean, see, but we're after losing too. But there's something else now. Just before I go, that I don't know where how this makes sense. But we're this lady talking about the heat pumps and that, and. Where they're changing from trying to get rid of oil. But now here the other day it was talking about them giving $20 million to, I believe it was one of the oil companies was a Bull Arm, I think. And there on the news they had given $120 million to develop oil. And now here they're giving somebody $20,000 to throw out their oil furnaces and put in heat pumps. So if anybody can make sense out of that, it's beyond me.
Yeah, I can't make a direct connection between the two, but I get your point. Anything else this morning, Leo?
Yeah.
Anything else this morning?
No, that's all. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Appreciate your time. All the best.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Just a very quick reference to an email which had a bunch of links connected to it. It's about the fact that Mr. Poilievre lost his seat in Carleton, and at some point in the near future, he's going to have to move out of Stornoway, the official residence of the leader of the official opposition. It's only been a few days, so maybe we can just take a deep breath there. And then there's another link of story of the Prime Minister moving into Rideau Cottage. And the fact of the matter is, we've used 24 Sussex, the one-time official residence of the Prime Minister, to fall into an unbelievable state of disrepair. And security is a problem there because it's so wide open. Can we not have all the parties come together and do one thing? Not about passing peace pipes or kumbaya or that kind of stuff. But can we just either fix or build a new official residence for the Prime Minister? You know, and all parties agree, because governments will change hands. It's embarrassing how juvenile the conversation is about 24 Sussex. Like, it's unbelievable. Anyway, someone wanted me to put that out there. There you go. Let's go to line number 3. Caller, you're on the air. Good morning, line 3.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. I am calling regarding the recent CBC article, I believe this yesterday, about the cost of care homes for children in the foster care system in Newfoundland and Labrador. I've had an absolute shocking experience as a foster parent, and I've actually really been hoping that it would hit the media. Unfortunately, it hasn't. I'd love to tell you a little bit about my story and hope that we can get this conversation out there, because I think most residents of Newfoundland and Labrador are not aware of what's happening with kids in care.
Such as?
So I welcomed 2 children to my home. I'm trying to be as cognizant as possible not to reveal personal details for the sake of the kids. And those kids came into my home before the kids moved in. I'm a single person. I was assured by CSSD that all of the support I needed would be provided. Some of the things that I had identified were, as a single person, typically kids in care need a lot of mental health supports, doctor's appointments, that sort of thing, that logistically as a working single person I might not be able to provide to the extent that they needed. CSSD had promised me that they would provide support in that. Once the kids entered my home, they were doing well. The oldest particularly was thriving, but I did need extra supports. And so I had requested something kind of similar to home care. You know, you probably pay someone $20 an hour to provide some extra support, driving kids to appointments, that sort of thing, because I had completely ran out of sick time, completely ran out of time off, everything. And so the kids were not getting the mental health supports they needed, the trauma support that they needed. And instead of providing that support, they told me they had no mechanism to provide that type of support to kids in a foster home. And they elected to instead toss those kids into a private group home at a cost of $800,000 per year against my request, against the children's wishes. And when that happened, the oldest, who was just 13, committed suicide.
Yikes.
There's a review, a very quiet review happening right now. I've spoken to everyone I could possibly speak to and been shut out by CSSD because, of course, they're in self-protection mode right now. That child did not have to die. My goal was to adopt those children, and I've calculated, if they paid someone $20 an hour, 15 hours a week to help drive the kids to their appointments, that sort of thing, that would have cost them just under $16,000. They elected to put those kids in a private group home for the cost of $800,000 to taxpayers, to the detriment of those children, simply because it was easier red tape-wise.
Yeah, choosing the easy path is generally, well, how do I say this? If there is a more difficult path with a better positive result as a possible outcome, let's choose that. People taking the easy way when we're talking about the health and welfare of children is exactly against the grain. It should never be. It doesn't make any sense. And in this case, a child unnecessarily is dead. So my comments on the amount of money for children with complex needs, children in care, is that year over year, for the past number of years, we've had to go to the contingency fund. So that's, I'm not begrudging the money to be spent because obviously that support is required. I'm just wondering where the shortcomings are with the management oversight or the management process, which means every year for the past 6, we had to dip into a contingency fund or additional supports to come forward. That was where my curiosity was coming from, because I don't even know what they actually mean by that. You'd probably know more than me because you're in the system, so to speak.
I think really this boils down to everyone in my personal network who's become a foster parent has stopped being a foster parent, right? And so those kids that would have gone into that foster home at a really kind of, small cost, I think it's probably $20,000 or $30,000 a year that CSSD pays for that. Instead, those kids are now going into group homes for $400,000 a year. If I can give you another example of that same situation, CSSD was behind more than $10,000 in payments to me. And those were like regular, payments that to help, pay for raising the kids, but also for things that they would say, buy that and we'll pay you back. Do that and we'll pay you back. Pay for this and we'll pay you back. The kids also were in an after-school program, again, because I was a working parent. CSSD had never paid that after-school program. And the after-school program said, look, we can't keep those kids anymore. I was to the point where it was right before Christmas. All my credit cards were maxed because I kept paying for these things. And CSSD said, don't worry, we'll pay you back. We'll pay you back. And I was $10,000 in debt on my credit cards. You can't keep foster parents like that.
No, obviously not. And it comes with a distinct cost, as you rightfully point out. In your care versus in a group home setting, I mean, number one, the child is probably much better off in a single-family home with hopefully loving and caring caregivers as opposed to in that setting. And we've seen some of the horrific stories that come from some of the most vulnerable
Look
youth.
at the Humby case.
Yeah, there you go. I was just going to say, look no further than the Tony Humby case. Absolutely.
And then right now, so there is one of the children still living. She's in a group home, and I keep regular touch with her. I talk to her almost every day, and lots of evenings I'll say, who's on staff tonight? And she'll say, I don't know their name, they're new. Like, it's horrific.
It certainly sounds it, and it's scary, or heartbreaking, or whatever people think.
I don't think people know, and I hope there's more public oversight in this and more public discussion, because there really needs to be. And you talk about how people enter the justice system. Honestly, if that was my life, I don't know that I wouldn't turn to drugs, right? I certainly don't blame that child who I love very much for taking her life, because she had a terrible life. And when you're 13 years old and that's the only way out you see, we need to look at what we're doing.
I couldn't agree more. I'm really glad you made time for the program this morning. Anything else?
No, thank you very much for taking my call, and hopefully this sparks some more public discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Pretty important stuff there. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, David will tell me who I'm speaking with next. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5 and say good morning to Katie Power. She's the Industry Relations Representative with the FFAW. And good morning, Katie. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning. As usual, thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you on, Katie. I'm going to put you on hold. Dave will clear up a phone line for us. Let's go to line number 2. Andrew Warren, farmer, you're on the air. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. How are you today?
Excellent today. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Oh, great, sir. Beautiful sunny day. It's hard to complain.
Where would you like to start? Because you got name dropped by Dan Rubin from the Food Producers Forum here earlier. So I'll give you the floor. Where would you like to start the conversation this morning, Andrew?
Well, just talking about agriculture, and I appreciate Dan and everything that his group is doing. I mean, they're absolutely phenomenal, what they're trying to do and their outlook on stuff. And I think it's much needed, definitely. So we're trying to do what we've been doing, I guess, the last 3 years. So I started a farm about 3 years ago. I purchased a piece of property. It was 36 acres, and it was a farm in the 70s or 80s, I do believe, small farm for animals. So of course everything had grown up and we covered back in and whatnot. So we've been working at that for the last 3 years now. So we've got about 15 acres here ready to plant this year, and we've got use of some other land. So we're just trying to feed everybody, I guess is the best term.
Bravo. So let's get into the early days. We hear from people in the agricultural world about the difficulties in getting started, whether it be about cost and input costs and maybe some red tape associated with it. Describe your beginnings 3 years ago at the farm and where you think government needs to have a better understanding of how difficult it might be to get it up and running.
Well, I got to say, all three of what you mentioned have been hectic, to say the least. Red tape is one thing, financials is another. I mean, it's an industry that we need. We have no choice. I know the number keeps getting dropped, about 20%. To my understanding, my research, it's 20% of land development that we have. It's not actually 20% of produce that's being, produced here. So we're actually somewhere around 14% for produce being produced here. So we're low. So, I mean, the need to get new farmers in is huge, but the red tape, the funding delays, the amount of stuff you have to do, I mean, it's just astronomical. As of today, I've got over $2 million spent to get where we're to now. And this year, thankfully, I mean, we're going to have a good plant year. But it took a lot to get there. So, I mean, government hasn't really, it's been a lot of promises, lots of, I've had visits, sort of thing. But, I mean, we haven't, as of today, I think I've gotten $34,000, which doesn't do anything really when you're talking labor, food, your tractors or your equipment. It's a lot. So I mean, the government, in my opinion, definitely needs to step up there and put their money where their mouth is. They like to say that we need it. We're supporting it and whatever. But drop some of the red tape and make it more accessible to young people trying to get into it.
Can you give us an example, one clear example of the red tape that is unnecessary or overly cumbersome?
Oh, just even when it goes down to a land transfer, you have to have so much stuff in place just to get the land transfer, and it takes. We all know what crown lands are like. It takes quite a bit of time to get the actual paperwork. You can't even apply for anything until you actually have the paperwork stating that the land is in your name. Then there's so many things that you need to try to figure out what to do and how to do it. The staff that are in place by the government are phenomenal. I mean, they go above and beyond every day. They are excellent. There's just not enough of them. They're stretched really, really thin, like most government sectors, I guess. To pick one example, it would definitely be, just getting support from the government. Like when it comes to helping you with your paperwork, with what you need to do, with what applications you need to send in. It's a whole. It's just a nightmare to try to navigate it for somebody that hasn't been through it before, right?
Help us understand, or I'll get your perspective on this. We'd look at the number of farms that were in this province just mere decades ago versus what's out there today. The world of the mega farm has really taken over the Canadian landscape. What sort of problem does that produce for you as a smaller or medium scale farm, for whether it be a home for your product or shelf space in grocery stores, or any of the complications that come with being up against the so-called big guy?
Well, I think Dan Rubin's aspect and look at that kind of answers where I am too with it. Thankfully, where I am in the Burin Peninsula, this was a big agricultural hub years ago, and that's actually kind of coming into play in my benefit now that a lot of the older farmers have since retired and their land is now set vacant. So they've given me granted me access to use their land. To put product and stuff in, but which is great. But to get into the industry, you need to have the equipment to set the transplants, to till the land, to water and fertilize. The land is great to have, which we do, but we don't have the means to put it together without the support. But on the Burin Peninsula, I have a great market because it's just us here, and I think that the big Canadian farms, like you had said, they can't provide the quality, freshness, the family atmosphere type deal that we have here. So I think we're in a little bit of a different, sector in what they are. People now know the value and quality that you can get from local produce, and I think they're willing to support that at most costs.
Yeah, you would think so. And one of the examples, and I know I'm not exactly sure what you produce on your farm, so I guess I should ask that first.
Well, this year we have, as I look at across the field, we're going to have strawberries, raspberries. We're going to have, I've got over 600,000 carrot seeds to go in the ground. I've got 45,000 turnip. I've got 47,000 cabbage, 45,000 beets, 10,000 onions, 7,500 pounds of seed potato. We've got 12,000 heads of broccoli, 12,000 heads of cauliflower, kale, leek, tomatoes, green peppers, you name it, parsnip. We've got it also this year, which is the third year, so really our second year growing. We're expecting about 750,000 pounds of food.
I think farmers are obviously a cog in the wheel that we have to encourage, incentivize, and make sure that every business model that comes forward that's manageable gets off the ground. You mentioned carrots. I love name dropping this one. My grandfather, Steve Neary, was the largest carrot producer on the Avalon when he was farming.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Andrew, anything else you want to say this morning? Because we have lots of time if you'd like to add something.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time, and like I said, I just hope that the government, especially now with changing hands federally, and then changing prime ministers and provincially. That's soon coming up. I hope they really do understand how hard it is to do this, and they really need to give the support to the people that are actually putting the boots on the ground and putting, the stake equity and sweat equity in there. I mean, I hope that they come around and see that this is something that we really, really need and stick to it.
100%, Andrew. Really appreciate you making time. I wish you a bountiful harvest.
Thank you, Paddy. You take care.
Same to you, sir.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
All right, yeah, we've got to do better on that front. We just really do. Let's take a break. Hopefully we have a clear phone line to speak with Katie Power, the Industry Relations Representative at the FFAW. Then, of course, Volunteer Week. Colin Corcoran from the Community Sector Council, and plenty of time left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Taking more to the Industry Relations Representative at the FFAW. That's Katie Power. Good morning, Katie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How am I sounding now?
You sound great. Welcome to the show. Appreciate your patience.
Awesome, thank you. So I did just want to hop on today to clarify some mixed messaging that's been circulating online. I know Open Line has a significant reach, particularly for the FFAW membership. And in the same token, social media, Facebook in particular, is a big resource and source of news and information for our membership. So I think it's important we can sort of clear the air in some context and provide some context to some messaging that's out there right now.
I've heard it too, Katie. We're talking about the FFAW. One person wrote me an email saying that really disappointed to know that the union is, in their words, in bed with government and the big wind energy proponents that may indeed be coming to town. So I've heard it, so obviously you've seen it and heard it. What exactly is the reality?
Right. So unfortunately, this rhetoric is not uncommon. It's something that since I've been here, in short 3-ish years I've been here, I faced it a lot. I think, especially because I deal with oil and gas and wind energy and these energy groups, and it can be a bit controversial, particularly with our membership. But I guess to start, we recently shared broadly with our membership via our robust email outreach mechanism, as well as on our Facebook page, our website, information about an onshore wind development with ABO Energy, the TQK project. We shared information about their open house sessions that are coming up. And through the jigs and the reels, it's been sort of misinterpreted or misrepresented by folks who, I guess, first and foremost, are not affiliated with FFAW, do not work in the fishery, that, we're promoting this. And, we are, I guess, so to speak, as you put it, in bed with government or with these onshore wind energy groups. And it's just unfortunate that that's the way that it gets sort of twisted. But I just did want to, again, clarify the mixed messaging. To me, it's I won't even say it's misinformation or misrepresentation, because I do think it's outright disinformation. I feel that it's the way that it's being shared. It's false information intended to manipulate our membership, the way that it's being sort of stirred up. So I guess my point is, FFAW, we're a member-driven organization. So we have a fundamental responsibility and a mandate to share to our membership about these meetings, to get them at the table, to get them early, to get them the earliest information, to get them informed so they can sort of gather the information, ask questions from the source, and we bring them into, my job in particular is to bridge that gap in communication between whether that be oil and gas companies or onshore wind projects or offshore wind projects, whatever it may be, to get our membership to the table, to, ask these questions, gather the correct information, and then register as early as possible their opposition or support. So it can be sometimes a double-edged sword, You can share the information about the meeting so that our groups can be there and our members can be at the table to hear the information and make their own opinions about it. Or there's the other way where, you're not circulating details of these meetings, and folks will come back and say, well, we didn't know anything about this. So it's hard to kind of strike that balance, but that's really what the intention was, and the intention will be when we share information about meetings and open houses for for any sort of organization, whether it be onshore wind, oil and gas, or what have you. It's to make sure our members can get the information as early as possible, and we can amplify our concerns, should there be any, from the earliest days of the planning, so that we can, make changes should there need to be any.
Can you say that this disinformation may be used to manipulate the members? What do you mean by that? Do you think there's disgruntled members that are not favourable towards the union and or union leadership, or trying to stir the pot? Or what exactly did you mean by that?
I just mean that I think it's important that, the general public as well, but particularly I'm speaking for our members, I think folks need to be cognizant of where information is coming from. And I think it comes back to, fundamentally just stop and think critically. Is the information coming from a credible source? Does what they're saying make sense? I know that the conversation around this onshore wind piece in particular, as you mentioned, talks about the union and FFAW, being in bed or affiliated with these onshore wind energy groups, and the government, which is another funny one for me. But I guess, you and I have spoken about this before, in particular me, but, our organization has a pretty significant and public history of challenging the provincial and federal governments on a multitude of issues, as well as wind energy groups. So I guess it's important that our members stop and think critically and, ask themselves, does it make sense what I'm hearing? And if they're not sure, call the union and speak directly to your union representatives. These wind energy projects, it's directly within my portfolio. So give me a call. I'm 709-576-7276, extension 213. If you ever have any doubts, just reach out to me directly, and I can steer you in the right course.
Really appreciate the time, Katie. It's unfortunate that for so many organizations, you've got to combat the disinformation campaigns because they're running rampant. It doesn't matter what area or arena of life we're talking about these days. It's hard to sift through what's real and what's not.
100%. Yeah, it's not unique to our organization, but I think it is important that I got it out there for our members today.
And I'm glad you made time for the show. Thanks, Katie.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Katie Power, Industry Relations Rep at the FFAW. Let's go. Volunteer Week is on the go. Let's put a nice bow on it this morning when we speak with the CEO of the Community Sector Council. That's Colin Corcoran. Good morning, Colin. You're on the air.
Good morning to you. Happy Volunteer Week.
Happy Volunteer Week. Colin, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Jeanette Russell with the Labrador Coalition for Search and Rescue. Hi, Jeanette. You're on the air.
Good morning. How are you, Patty?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm doing well. I wanted to call in and reach your listeners today just to speak about the lack of primary search and rescue in Labrador. I've been lobbying the federal government since my son was last at sea in 2021 to improve the situation. We're getting nowhere. Ottawa seems to be the problem. They don't want to hear any discussion about putting additional resources in Labrador. And when I speak to the resources, yes, they have done some things. They've put some small boats in Labrador, but these are all secondary resources which are not sufficient to meet the standard of care that's available in Newfoundland and the rest of Atlantic Canada. My approach is more on the fish harvester safety side. So I've launched a public safety campaign last week leading up to the opening of the Labrador fishery, just trying to put a face. I think Ottawa has lost the true message of what this campaign is trying to fight for, and that is the people who are on the water on a daily basis during the fishing season, and they want to be safe, and they're not safe.
No, and of course the story goes back when you lost your son Mark, and of course he was out there with his best buddy Joey Jenkins on the Island Lady, so I'll offer my condolences one more time. In this conversation, to me, it's either government are completely ignorant or they're oblivious. Because, I remember a parliamentary committee where this was being discussed one time, and one of the members of the committee said, well, there's similarly the lack of resources on the Great Lakes, trying to equate the two, the merciless North Atlantic off of Labrador to the Great Lakes, even though they're expansive bodies of water. So do you think it comes down to people in authority just don't know what they're talking about? They just don't understand the risks with being on the water off the coast of this province, specifically Labrador?
I don't think they have the right to use that excuse, because I know I've spoken to federal members who have been lobbying hard and fast for this issue, and they have been informed. So, the federal officials, they are informed, and the word that I keep receiving is there is a lack of appetite in Ottawa to spend the money in Labrador. When you look at it, since 2016, they've increased lifeboat stations in Newfoundland by 42%, and they've done nothing in Labrador comparable.
I'll just never understand the shortcomings there by the federal government. And I wasn't trying to make an excuse for them. I was more pointing to the fact that there was maybe a layer of incompetence making some of these decisions, because there's no good argument to be made when we're talking about safety on the water. So if we get into the specifics for what you're asking for, what would you put on that list?
Three things. When I started this campaign, we were talking about a federal inquiry into fish harvester safety, and I'm really and I was a bit wishy-washy in the early days because I didn't think we'd ever get it. But the more I dig into this issue and the more I fight for this, the more I realize we're not going to get anywhere without a federal inquiry, because a federal inquiry would open up all shortcomings within the system to reveal what's going on. And that's why Ottawa doesn't want to give it to us, because Ottawa knows what's going to show up in an inquiry, and then they are forced to respond. So the federal government is not going to give us an inquiry because they do not want to respond. They are totally satisfied with the status quo of search and rescue. On their website, they call it a comprehensive search and rescue program in Newfoundland and Labrador. But how can you say it's comprehensive when there is no primary search and rescue station in Labrador? So two things that need to happen: upgrading Five Wing Goose Bay to a primary search and rescue station to provide resources closer to the people that are on the water. And the third thing that needs to happen is they need to put some lifeboat stations in Labrador. The Coast Guard responded to an email I sent them in the fall. They sent me an image of the traffic. They always say, well, there's less people in Labrador, there's less vessels on the water compared to Newfoundland. We have low stats of people requiring assistance in Labrador that are calling the Canadian Coast Guard. And I use the analogy that if I live in a community in Labrador and my house is on fire, I'm not going to phone the fire department at St. John's to come put it out, because they're not going to get there. I'm going to phone my neighbour. And that is a system that we have historically used in Labrador. We rely upon ourselves to save ourselves because we know we don't have the time for resources to come from Newfoundland. You look at the cold water survival model, you have 36 hours maximum to survive in cold water. Functional, about 29 hours. So if you're relying on all those resources to come from Newfoundland, you're not going to make it once you're in the water. The other greatest threat to fish harvesters on the water today is their vessels. If a fire is on your vessel, given the fiberglass makeup composition of vessels today, you don't have time for all these resources come from Newfoundland to help you be safely rescued. So until something is put on the coast of Labrador, it's not going to happen. The other thing is I have asked the Auditor General to conduct a legislative audit of the Canadian Coast Guard, because I do think they have failed in their duty to supply public safety in Labrador.
And with so much conversation, I know Labrador is not the Arctic, but we're talking about Northern Gateway, whether it be for research, but it also requires infrastructure. And we've got to start with safety-related matters, and that would be the Canadian Coast Guard. I'm not sure how to add this to the conversation, but like your husband, Dwight, who I think is the vice president of the Labrador Fishermen's Union Shrimp Company, on the heels of the tragic loss of Joey and Mark, talk about things like EPIRBs, which are the radio beacon system. So it's emergency, I can't remember what the acronym means in full, but anyway, it's a radio beacon. Do you have any message on that front, whether it be government involvement on that or awareness for fish harvesters or anyone who's a mariner? Because that is probably an important component for trying to find vessels who have not reported back, who are lost at sea, because that's one of the complicating factors. Even with the lack of presence of the Coast Guard, it's just how expansive the sea is, and to try to find that needle in the haystack is extremely difficult.
That is a very, very important point. Having an EPIRB on a vessel lets you know where to start the search as opposed to trying to guess. In the instance of the Island Lady, when Mark and Joey were lost, we didn't know exactly where their last known location was. They were guessing. They were having to guess, and then from there track the tide and all that to see where they might have drifted. But with an EPIRB, you know precisely where their last known location was, and it keeps pinging even after it's submersed. Whereas then you know right where they are. You can easily send a helicopter to that location to see if they're on the water or below the water. If they're on the water, you know other resources. Okay, we may be able to do a rescue. In the instance of Mark and Joey, we didn't know if they were above the water or below the water for a very long time. And you didn't know where to start looking because you didn't really know where they last were located. So an EPIRB, when I started teasing into this, and I asked, Merv Wiseman has been a tremendous resource to me, and I asked Merv, I said, Merv, what do these things cost? I was thinking they were, outrageously expensive. And he said, Jeanette, you can get them anywhere from $500 to $1,000. It's a one-time purchase. There's no annual. Once you register it with Transport Canada, there's no recurring charge to keep it maintained. There's no annual fee. So to me, it just makes sense, and that's an easy win for Ottawa. That's an easy win for the federal government to say we care about fish harvester safety, and we're going to require all commercial fishing vessels to have an EPIRB. Right now, any vessel under 12 meters, which, let's be honest, are the most vulnerable vessels on the water today in the commercial fishery, they are not required to have an EPIRB. Whereas all aircraft in Canada, whether you're in the smallest kind of plane, you have to have an EPIRB. So I don't know why this discrepancy exists. It doesn't make sense. It's an easy win for the federal government to show that they actually care about fish harvester safety. Yes, I realize it is an additional cost to fish harvesters, but they don't care about that when they want to change the size of nets. Yeah. And they say, you got to go buy all new nets and have a different, mesh size. So why does it matter when we talk about safety?
It's a good question. And the infrastructure is already in place. There's a Canadian beacon registry, and the EPIRB acronym is Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. So I think it's critically important because right after this loss, there was 70 boats that were equipped with an EPIRB in the Labrador Shrimp Co-op. So, just that cautionary tale to folks out there. I know it's not for me to tell you how to spend your money, but even with the Coast Guard, with absolute savings associated with the search at sea, you wouldn't have a very specific starting point. And for the hope to get you back safe, if we know where to look for you, then that heightens the likelihood of you coming home safe. It would be a rescue mission, not a recovery mission.
And it means the difference between looking for a needle in a haystack and knowing exactly where you need to go and start looking. And it allows, a more coordinated approach to rescue.
No question. Jeanette, always appreciate your time. Keep us in the loop when you have some information to share.
All right. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. You too. Jeanette Russell with the Labrador Coalition for Search and Rescue. Let's take a break. We're talking volunteers right after this. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the CEO of the Community Sector Council, Colin Corcoran. Colin, you're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Benny.
Good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. Happy Volunteer Week.
Happy Volunteer Week to you as well.
What's going on during Volunteer Week? Not specifically appreciation events or what have you, but like we were talking mental health and it's unmasking mental health. What are some of the go-to themes that we should be talking about regarding volunteers this year?
Oh, absolutely. And beyond the theme, volunteers make waves, which is the theme for this year and very important for us here in Newfoundland and Labrador because, the ocean shapes our communities, shapes our people, shapes our culture. In the same way, volunteers do the same. And listening carefully to some of the callers earlier this morning around food security, around emergency services, search and rescue, around mental health, volunteerism, as you know as well as an avid volunteer, it actually contributes to positive mental health. The act of volunteering and the act of giving is intrinsically linked to the benefits that somebody can get from volunteering itself and the act of doing so.
Absolutely. It's not only giving back, but the self-gratification from helping people is very real. And I hate to boil it back to dollars and cents, but volunteering is a part of the economy. It's an economic give back. I mean, just think about the 210,000 individuals in this province who are volunteers. If you back that out of the equation, things fall apart. Government would never be able to backfill what volunteers do.
Absolutely not. We in Newfoundland and Labrador have one of the highest rate of volunteerism in the country, so at 46%. 210,000 volunteers, on average, again, the highest in the country, 161 hours. That translates in an economic sense to 33.8 million hours of labor, which, when you take a step back and look at it, if we were to replace that labor force here in the province, we would have to hire 16,500 people just to cover off what volunteers give to our province every single year.
I don't think people are aware of those facts. And I wish we did more to highlight volunteers, not just this week as we celebrate and thank volunteers, but I would hope, like at the beginning of this week, I was hoping that people in the community would call to highlight someone who's doing great work where they live, who was a volunteer. Because when we put faces to, or names and faces to the stories, I think it goes a long way to helping volunteers understand that they are appreciated, because they absolutely are. Sometimes I think we forget to do so, though, in a vocal manner.
You're absolutely right. And one of the things somebody asked me earlier in the week about the week coming up and what I was looking forward to. One of the things I really appreciate about this week in the event, and the events continue on into next week and actually to next month and a couple of months afterwards, is the opportunity to actually sit down with volunteers, ask them about their stories, ask them about why they volunteer, the challenges that they're seeing. I've had a number of conversations with hundreds of people at this point in time over the span of Volunteer Week plus activities, which really, we talk about the stats and we talk about statistics. I'm still waiting for the recent volley of stats coming out of Stats Canada, but really humanize what volunteering means. To really truly understand what it means in Newfoundland and Labrador, you need those personal stories. You need those reflections, because data is great, but storytelling comes when you put a face to the data set.
100%. So you talk about participation rate and what have you in this province. We've heard from Volunteer Canada that there's many not-for-profits and charitable organizations struggling on the volunteer front, basically because of the pandemic. There was activities ceased for the most part, and consequently some of the volunteers didn't come back into the fold. Is it a similar story in this province, or have we staved off that?
It is, and I hear both. I hear some groups and organizations. The pandemic was difficult, but they managed to retain the volunteers that they've had. And I've had organizations that said, we're not sure what we're going to do over the next couple of years. So partnering with Volunteer Canada, CSCNL is working on the National Volunteer Action Strategy, along with partners right across the country. And one of the things I keep in mind when we talk about these national strategies to help guide where public policy, where actions need to be taken to rejuvenate our volunteer base and determine what the future of volunteerism may look like, is we absolutely need to localize that strategy. And so a national strategy works and will dovetail very nicely, but in Newfoundland and Labrador, because of our unique geography, because of our unique culture, because of our demographics, that strategy needs to look a little bit different, and it needs to be bespoke for our province.
100%. Any activities or events this weekend you'd like to tell people about before we run out of time?
Oh, there's. I was just scrolling through social feeds while I was on, and at this point, there's volunteer events happening right across the province. So there's a number of celebrations even last night in Mount Pearl and St. John's. Yesterday, if you were in Southern Labrador, if you went to any, this is one of my favorite ones. If you went to any town hall as a volunteer, you would have received an ice cream sundae. So there's everything from award ceremonies or recognition events that are happening. We're very thankful for their honors to host us at Government House recently, and then in Gander and Central before. And a number of those events are continuing into next week and into next month. So I recommend people to check out their local groups and organizations, our website, cscnl.ca, navigate over to the Volunteer Week tab to get informed about what's happening, but also what's happening in your communities.
Absolutely. Great to have you on the show, Colin. Keep up the good work and stay in touch.
Thank you, Pay.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It's Colin Corcoran, CEO of the Community Sector Council. Let's take a break. When we come back, another conversation about Volunteer Week. Katrina wants to talk about kids in care, something about an apartment complex. Gary Corbett, my old buddy with Softball Newfoundland, he's the president, talk about a selection camp coming up in Florida. And then Comic Book Day. Free Comic Book Day at that. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Good morning, Carrie. You're on the air.
Oh, it's me. Hi, Patty.
Hello.
I just wanted to call in and let you and your listeners know about Free Comic Book Day, which is coming up tomorrow, Saturday, May 3rd, and it's being celebrated by comic book shops all across the city, all across the country. It's a really exciting celebration with the theme that comics are for everyone. So the idea is the publishers create little sneak peeks of comics and graphic novels that are going to be coming out over the next year, and really try and encourage people to pick up a comic book, maybe for the first time.
Well, they would be very much the slim minority who have never picked up a comic book. The sales of comic books, digital comics, graphic novels, they're way up, aren't they?
I would say a lot of people have picked up a graphic novel, which is more of that book format, or a manga. Manga is huge. But I still know a lot of people have never tried kind of that like magazine style, what we call a floppy comic book, single issue. So yeah, it's an opportunity to try one out, try out a new story. And, we're really trying to encourage, especially kids, to try comics. I think there's a big emphasis right now on just recognizing how accessible comics are for children. They're colorful. They have those visual cues, so they can be a lot more engaging. So, yeah, we've got lots of comics for kids, but also for adults to, in the horror genre, sci-fi, fantasy. I think there's really something for everyone.
So when you say free, if I walk into a comic book store, I'm getting a free comic?
Yeah, so at Downtown Comics, we have a limit of 3, and I think all of the comic book stores have a similar limit, so it's a great excuse to visit all of them. So I'm at Downtown Comics, 141 Duckworth Street. Time Masters is at 70 Hamlin Road, and Heroes and Hobbies is at 835 Topsail out in Mount Pearl. So we're all participating, and, we really encourage people to make a day of it. I think we all kind of have a different mix of stock and vibes. So, yeah, it's a great excuse to, check them all out.
What's the most popular genre in did you call it floppy comic book? Is that the word you used?
Yeah, that's one of the words we use in the industry. Of course, superheroes have a huge dominance in the industry. It's kind of like if every fiction was a romance, like superhero has just taken over, especially those like individual floppy comics. And because, they become collectible, they've kind of resisted the death of print, which is really cool. But horror is really big. As I mentioned, sci-fi, fantasy. There's some really interesting kind of more indie stuff happening. And just the level of artistry and creativity that people are putting into comics is just incredible. I highly recommend. Yeah, come by, have a perusal at our shelves, and I'm sure there will be some piece of art that will really appeal to you.
Before I let you go, there's actually a pretty strong comic book community as well, whether it be Wallace Ryan or Andrew Hawthorne or people like that. Can you give us some examples of what's happening on the local scene?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's really blown up. Wallace and Andrew have done really great stuff. Mike Fian has just been doing like a Star Trek comic. We've got Paul Tucker, who just did a really interesting like crime graphic novel around tennis. And we even have like big names like Michael Walsh, who publishes with some of the bigger publishers like Marvel, DC, Image, and he did actually a graphic novel set here called Oats and Elephine. It's more of like a young adult comic, but it's so beautiful. Kind of plays with the fairy mythology that is in Newfoundland, and these kids like find themselves in a fairyland and have to rescue a little sister. So it's there's a lot happening, and I'm actually working with a team to do a comics arts festival. So we'll certainly be calling you about that in the near future.
Fair enough. Not to split hairs, but there's no myth regarding the fairies. They're real.
Good point.
So's the old hag. Carrie, good to have you on the show. Happy Free Comic Book Day. Hopefully it's a big success.
All right. Thank you for your time. I hope to see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
All right, bye-bye. Will I keep going here, Dave? Yeah, let's keep going. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to the president of Softball NL. That's Gary Corbett. Gary, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Excellent today. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm good. Patty, before we get into talk about the World Baseball Softball Confederation camp that's ongoing, there's actually 2 camps ongoing. We'll talk about them briefly. I just want to take a very quick moment to offer our condolences to a longtime sponsor of softball in my area, Conception Bay Center, was instrumental in creating the Fleetline Bus softball team back in the 70s and 80s. That allowed the opportunity for players outside of St. John's, especially in the Conception Bay Centre, to finally put a team together and move into the St. John's Senior Men's League, which we know today is the best league still in Canada. The owner, Mr. Will Fury, actually, while we're speaking now, has his funeral taking place in Holyrood, and his wife died a few years ago. But they were instrumental, and people would remember Fleetline Bus from the Bay runs from Carbonear to St. John's, just it's a regular bus run. But the Fleetline Bus senior men's team became an integral part of softball in our province and Atlantic Canada, and for over 10 years they were a primary sponsor. So on behalf of all players who play with the Fleetline Bus and coaches, we offer our condolences to all the Fury and Hemmelberry family.
Here, echo your condolences. Gary, what exactly is going on with the selections camps?
Okay, so right now, currently, the start of this Wednesday, Softball Canada is hosting its men's national selection camp for 2025. There's 27 athletes from Canada who are at that camp, which started on Wednesday and is over Sunday. 6 of them are from Newfoundland and Labrador. We have Shane Boland from the Goulds, Sean Clary from Harbour, Maine, Bradley Ezego, Holyrood, Kyle Ezego, Conception Bay South, Jordan Pomeroy, Placentia, and Colin Welch, Petty Harbour. And one of the assistant coaches for Canada's national men's team is Les Howley, who lives in Conception Bay South. This camp is crucial because Softball Canada has to trim that roster down to 16 players for the World Championships that are taking place this summer in July, 8th to the 14th, in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. The irony of that tournament, back in 2001, Softball Newfoundland bid to host that championship, but on the evaluation of the field, it didn't meet the current regulation standards for World Softball Championships, which is very ironic, seeing back in 1994, people would remember, we hosted the World Women's with 27 countries, and 8 of them were for the Olympic qualifier for the first Olympics that women's softball was permitted in the United States. So we've come a long ways in some ways, in other ways now it's gone ahead. So these athletes are representing, a variety of areas that have been traditional hot softball beds in our province and are still doing it. So we're wishing them all well. They've been on their own training programs under the auspices of Softball Canada all year. We're confident that all 6 of them will make that team. But when you consider that 6 to 16, that's a very high percentage. But we've been able to do that for the last number of World Championships. So we're confident that these athletes, with the level that they are performing at, should make that.
Well, I mean, the Clearys and the Bolans and the Ezekels have been key components to the national team. So they're shoo-ins as far as I can tell. You mentioned Jordan Pomeroy. Is he anything to George?
No, I can't answer that question. He's from Placentia, so there's a likelihood he is.
Yeah.
Well, for certain. And interesting on George, we got a major event coming up the end of May. If we get a moment, we can speak on that. It's our annual AGM and our Hall of Fame class for 2025. And George is getting inducted in the Hall of Fame on that as one of the members that night, too.
Yeah, I gave it a shout out here on the show, so let's give the names one more time. Jerry Bruce as a builder, Mark Dwyer as an athlete and a builder, Brian Fleming as an athlete, Bill Nixon as an athlete, Ray O'Brien as a builder, George Pomeroy, athlete, Donnie Roach, athlete, Paul Toomey, builder, Ray Withers, athlete, and Jerry Bruce, builder. Also, you mentioned national team members, also going to be recognized at that event at Glendenning at the end of the month, are outgoing members of the national team. Ryan Boland, Jason Hill, and of course John Hill, who was a coach for quite a long time. So congratulations to all hands.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll also do our awards presentation for 2024 and 2023 and the annual general meeting. So it's going to be quite an evening. It's on the 31st of May, Saturday at Glendenning Golf Course. I also wanted to mention that we have 2 other athletes, and we're very fortunate to have athletes at the national level. We have 2 other athletes, Adrian Green from Carbonear and Ryan Marr from Petty Harbour, who are on the national under-23 men's softball team, and they are supposedly this week in Argentina, for preparations for the Pan American Games in 2026. So that's, we're getting very lucky to be able to have our athletes in those kinds of pools. But if you look back at 2024, which we'll celebrate on the 31st, we had 2 Canadian championships. We had the Galway Hitmen, who won the Canadian Championship, and that's 9 times that we've won it. And we've had the under-23 Murnau Mariners, who won the Canadian. So if you look at the senior men's and under-23, and we also had a bronze medal with the under-15. So we are feeding a lot of male athletes into the national men's program for years to come, we hope. And that encourages other athletes, obviously, at the minor level to continue to, be the best athlete they can. And just a side note, on the women's game, we're very proud this year to be able, besides hosting the Canada Games this year in this summer, male and female, which will have 2 good, strong contenders there. We have 2 athletes who are going to be playing or are moving out of the Canada Games female program after the summer and going to university. We have Sarah Power, who's been selected by the University of Ottawa, the GB softball team. And we have Hallie Joy from Harbour, Maine, who's selected by Hill United in Texas. So we are getting opportunities for our athletes to get outside the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, not only to be seen, but also to have experiences in it. And that's great for all relevant to softball.
Yeah, and Hallie Joy is going to get one of the provincial awards here at Glendending at the end of the month as well. Gary, always good to have you on. You think back to more my day, so to speak, with the Colin Abbotts of the world. We've produced some of the best softball players in the country, consequently some of the best softball players in the world. It's amazing.
Definitely, and we keep asking ourselves the question: how do we, how did that happen, and how do we keep it happening from a board of directors? And what is the input that the association can do? And that we obviously have some parts in it, but these athletes themselves have so many opportunities now. So if you look at the male program, they get the opportunity not only to play in the St. John's Senior Men's League, but they also, a fair number of them, on times up to over 30, are playing in the IFC World Championships throughout the United States and Canada. And our own local coach that you mentioned, John Hill, who we're recognizing the end of May, he is one of the coaches of Hill United Chiefs, and they won the World Championships in the IFC last year. And we still have 3 other players in Newfoundland playing with them this year: Shane Boland, Bradley Ezego, and Kyle Ezego. So they're getting opportunities now, and that's coming back and helping the younger athletes, because every time that we need some assistance, especially with a new program we started 2 years ago, the High Performance Program, these players are helping a lot with that in IDEAN and clinics and in their own local associations in the towns they are. They're doing things that we don't even know about, helping out. They're also helping the both Canada Games teams and doing well. For example, today Ryan Boland, who just retired from who we recognize, the end of May, who just retired from the national team program after 12 years. Ryan is doing a coaching symposium the night that we have on this weekend at Memorial University and in Avondale. So they're putting lots into the game to help develop younger athletes and coaches, etc., which is exceptional for a sport.
No question. Gary, I appreciate your time this morning. Congratulations to all the inductees and award winners, and good luck to all hands who are trying to get on to Team Canada this go-round. Stay in touch.
I will, Paddy, and thanks for giving us the opportunity.
Happy to do it.
Have a great day.
You too, Gary.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Gary Corbett, President Softball NL. The question when we go into the summers when we were kids, the boys say, what are you playing this year? I'm playing some ball. And the question then would have become, what are you playing? Softball or hardball? Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let us go to line number 2. Jason, you're on the air. Hello, Jason, line number 2.
Hi.
Hi there.
Patty.
Yes, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I just wanted to drop on because I was listening to people calling about volunteerism and how essential it is to pretty much a lot of programs here on the island that wouldn't exist without it. And I just wanted to shout someone out who goes above and beyond, like almost every sports program here on the Burin Peninsula. Mark Pittman from St. Lawrence has his fingers into it, and he's running the BPSA soccer program as well as the clubs in St. Lawrence, and just about every school sport between St. Lawrence and Lamoline, which is St. Joseph's Academy. He's been doing it for years and doesn't complain, and every day as soon as he leaves school, he's on either a sports field or in a gymnasium with with a bunch of kids and keeping it going. And I don't know if anybody knows the history of St. Lawrence, once known as the soccer capital of Canada, but without Mark, the program wouldn't exist anymore because, well, numbers have dropped obviously over the years in smaller communities, but he's managed to keep it together and still keeping top-notch quality soccer played here on the Burin Peninsula. So I just felt like it was worth a call in, and other people should do so if there's other such volunteers in the community that you feel don't get enough recognition. But Mark Pittman of St. Lawrence, he's top-notch and goes above and beyond for the kids.
I love the volunteer shout-out here, and we know minor sports would not even exist if it wasn't for volunteers. So, and there's lots of other areas of life that the same can be said, but sports without question. And I'm glad you gave a due shout out to the volunteers down on the boot, keeping it alive. It's remarkable that you just came on and talked about that, because Dave Williams just walked into the studio during the break, and we were talking about some of the communities that are notable for producing so many top quality softball players. And then, of course, when you look at soccer in particular on the Burin Peninsula, it's in the culture. It's unbelievable how good teams have been coming, whether it be from Burin or Lawn or St. Lawrence itself. So it's a big deal where you are.
Well, right now, like St. Lawrence, the population hovers around 1,200, I believe it is now. So it's a small base, but we've got a lot of industry there now, too. Like OCI, the fish plant there, they're running pretty much year-round, as well as the forest bar mines there in St. Lawrence. So I find it funny that our population has kind of dropped, but we've got more industry in that town than most of the Burin Peninsula. But as for the sports, we're with the small numbers that we have, we're still producing top quality. And soccer is, well, that's always been a mainstay out here. But like, I just moved back here, I don't know, in January. And for me, my son is a huge basketball player, and I've called into the program many times before on a variety of different subjects. But like, he goes to a school now with 77 kids, and I said to Mark when I was moving out, is there any chance we could start a grade 9 basketball team? I know numbers are low, and I know that you're already really busy with more teams than you probably should be handling on your own. But he agreed, and we took 5 kids from our school, and we combined with Lon, 5 more kids, and went and won provincial grade 9 basketball. And as well, just a group of grade 9 and 11s that he coaches went and won the senior boys 1A provincial championships for the first time ever for that school. We hosted it. We had the biggest tournament of all the provincial tournaments, 10 teams from as far as Labrador and the West Coast. And it was an amazing experience. And to see that, it's just something special,
100% it is, man. Jason, really appreciate the time this morning. Thanks for doing it.
All right, thanks, Petty.
All the best. All right, bye-bye. And look, if someone wants to sneak in a shout-out to a great volunteer where you live doing whatever, we're happy to take that on. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, there's a caller who wants to talk about the 55-plus apartment complex, and Nancy Reid from the Coalition of Persons with Disability. She's also in the queue, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. How about you?
Good. First of all, I'd like to say what a great job you're doing for people, giving them a voice to say things that they want to get out.
Happy to do it, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I'm calling, first of all, I have a family and friends on in a certain senior / I'm really nervous, Patty. I'm sorry.
Take your time. Go right ahead.
On a senior / retirement home. The people there have the people there have a treadmill for several months now that someone gave to us, and the company who owns the place will not get it fixed because of someone giving it to. Like, if they had to get it, they would fix it. But because they didn't get it for the people there, they're not going to fix it for us. So the treadmill has been laid up for months. What I'd like to do is ask your audience to, if there's any way possible, if they got any free time, could they drop over and have a look and maybe fix it for the people there to spend some time on it?
We're happy to reach out to the community to see if anyone, whether they be in that industry as a retailer or someone who fixes this type of gym equipment, if they can help you and the residents out, we'll be happy to point them your way. So do you want me to just, if someone reaches out to me, I'll just share your phone number with them, or?
No, I would rather do it to Randy, is it, your worker there?
No, Dave, yeah.
Dave. I would rather let Dave know my number and, whoever calls or whatever, because this is not a really good time to be giving out my phone numbers. So I would love for someone to get in touch with me, and then I'll set up a time with them or something to come in and fix it if they got time.
That works for us, no problem.
Thank you, Patty. Have a nice day.
The very same to you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
So if you're in that world and you can... Well, you know your way around a treadmill or other types of gym equipment, and you can help the residents of that 55-plus apartment complex get their treadmill back in action, get in touch with us, and we'll help figure it out with you. Let's go to line number 5. Say good morning to the Executive Director at the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. That's Nancy Reid. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call today.
No problem at all.
I just want to start it with echoing, I guess, some of the, the messaging around Volunteer Week. And, of course, at the Coalition, being a community-based organization, we so fully recognize and see the value in volunteers, especially those in a formal way with our organizations.
Nancy, I'm going to have to cut you off. The phone line is terrible. It's just really crackling. So I'm going to put you on hold. David will figure it out, put you on a clear phone line so we can hear what you have to say. So is that okay? There you go. David has her. Line number 6, Peter, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. How are you?
We're doing okay. How you doing?
Well, not too bad. I just wanted to call in. I was listening to a gentleman there yesterday. He was talking about the unfair treatment that Polyev was getting from the media and whatnot. And good on him for doing that, because and I'm going to speak to you as someone who's actually met the guy. A couple of years ago, in around 2022, I reached out to every local politician, every MP here, made phone calls, I made email requests, whatever, just wanted to talk to somebody. Nobody returned my call. Now, as an avid viewer of the House of Commons every day, I watch it every day, the one person that I really found that was fighting for Canada was Pierre Polyev. He always had the right, always knew everything about everything. Seemed to me like the smartest man in the room. So I said, you know what? Nobody else here is going to talk to me. I think I'll give him a try. So I sat down, I found his email, and I wrote him an email. And I said, you know what? I'll probably never hear from him either. Well, much to my surprise, the very next day, I got a response from Mr. Polyev. He wasn't my MP, obviously. He was representing Carleton at the time. He sent me a 2-page response to my questions that I thought was the most impressive thing that I've ever seen in my life. He actually took time out of his day, and that wasn't just a quick answer. It took time to write what he wrote. It had bullet points. It had useful information for me. It was unbelievable. Now, that's just throwing that out there. Then I had the opportunity of actually meeting the guy in person on 2 separate occasions. And I have to tell you, Trump-like? Absolutely not. He's probably one of the nicest, most down-to-earth gentlemen you'll ever want to meet. He genuinely cares about the people of Canada and really wanted to help people, especially people here in Newfoundland. I mentioned all the problems, and I mean, so impressive. To listen to him speak, he doesn't use a piece of paper. One of the best debaters, one of the best speakers you could ever want to do. And if you want someone to go to bat against Mr. Trump, well, he's a fighter. And I really think that Canada, and Newfoundland especially, missed out on having someone really, really good for a change as the Prime Minister. And it was the hatchet job that the media has done to this man, defaming his character the way they have. Absolutely disgraceful. I watched Power and Politics last night with David Cochrane and Robert Fife, and what I saw was probably the most disgusting, absolutely disgusting display of, well, I won't even call it journalism.
Okay, what did the media do that was unfair?
Oh, they basically ganged up on this man. They made him. They said, oh, just because he has a few slogans, oh, he's too Trump-like. This is too Americanized. I mean, what's elbows up? What's Bill Baby Build? Are they slogans? That's what Carney uses. I mean, is that scary? Is he like Trump because he uses slogans? It's unbelievable. They destroyed this man's character. He is nothing like the media has portrayed him. They ganged up on this man. They made him look. They never said one positive thing about him. I mean, you don't. Even your show, you don't say anything positive about the guy. It's quite obvious you don't like him.
I don't say anything positive about politicians.
Yeah, well, I mean, you come to bat for Liberals on many occasions, but you've never come to bat on party.
Give me an example where I've come to bat for anybody on the Liberal provincial or federal front.
Well, every time that something comes up about, okay, the Liberals don't want to do this or whatever, you always still come up with this, oh, well, the Stephen Harper Conservatives, they did this and did this, trying to take away from it that, oh, well, these people are the same people. Well, there's been many
I think that's nonsense. I think it's absolute nonsense. There's one thing that the Liberals have touched, not one scandal that's happened in the last 10 years that I have not spoken to directly and repeatedly. If I've ever said Stephen Harper in any circumstance, and I think probably the most recent time I've done that is when the Liberals prorogued Parliament, which I said, this is an example that's been used by successive governments and it should not happen, whether it be Justin Trudeau going to Mary Simon or Stephen Harper going to the Governor-General at that time. That's not Stephen Harper did this, Justin Trudeau did that. That's about a concept of prorogation of Parliament for political purposes. So that's the last time I think I've even uttered Stephen Harper's name, and there's many other circumstances where I probably should have, but didn't. I don't defend the Liberals, I don't promote the Liberals, and people who say I do are completely disingenuous.
Okay, well, that's your opinion, but I'm just saying how I hear you on the air. It seems like you defend the Liberals on many occasions. That's just my opinion, okay? But, I mean, the thing is getting back to what I was talking about, what a hatchet job that these people, and I don't know if you saw Power and Politics last night and what these guys, David Cochrane, he's there laughing like a little schoolboy, laughing his head off, very unprofessional. I've never seen anything like it in my entire life. As a matter of fact, he should be fired. Because he is the most biased, him and Rosemary Barton are the two most biased reporters I've ever seen in my life, extremely unprofessional. I watched the election, and Rosemary Barton and some other lady were there, and they were there getting all giddy and excited. Oh, we're leading here. They were talking about the Liberals. As if we...
I'm not going to speak for CBC. I'm not going to defend or even acknowledge the CBC concerns because it has literally nothing to do with me. Nothing. So complaining to me about CBC is, I'm not sure what we're accomplishing.
I'm just making a point. Now here, I got one other point too. I mean, obviously Canada's made their choice, but I mean, I just hope that the people that Newfoundland elected, and I'm going to use Joanne Thompson as an example here. Okay, Joanne Thompson spent 4 years up in Parliament. She was elected, I call it, as a puppet Minister of Fisheries, just to make it look good for the Liberals in the last going on. That's my opinion. But, I mean, I've watched this woman over the last 4 years up there in the House of Commons. I watch it every day. She'd stand up and twice voted against stuff that would have helped Newfoundland, such as the ending the carbon tax, and she voted against Bill C-251 by Clifford Small about the seal fishery. I don't know if you remember that, but the seals, overpopulation of the seal fishery. She voted against that. That would have helped Newfoundland. So and the thing is, the only thing that other things that she's ever done is stand up and do about 10 shout-outs to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. Basically collected $1 million over 4 years for doing absolutely nothing. So I hope, now that she's been reelected by all of the elitists, in Newfoundland. I hope she goes up there and does a little bit more than what she has done for the last 4 years, and all of the other people too. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to go around saying, "Oh, I'm going to be working for Newfoundland," well, work for Newfoundland. Don't work for the party line and just go along with everything that your leader says. Do something for Newfoundland for a change, because I am sick and tired of this. We send these people up there, they sit down. There's a reason why they called them the Silent Six, because they did nothing. The only person that I ever saw fight for Newfoundland up in there over the last 4 years was Clifford Small. Fantastic man. And the sad part about it is, if you had elected the Conservatives, he would be your fisheries minister, someone who actually knows something about fisheries. I mean, Joanne was on your show the other day. You asked her what she would do as fisheries minister. She couldn't give you an answer.
But there's a good example. There's a good example, Peter. Joanne Thompson, the Liberal member for St. John's East, was on this program, and as far as I can tell, and as far as I'm concerned, I questioned her comprehensively about the fishery, about Coast Guard and Labrador. So I think that's a good example for me to use in a pushback of how I'm a Liberal, because I took her to task as best as I could with carefully crafted questions. I had the Prime Minister on this show, and absolutely no one can accuse me of letting him off the hook for 1 single second. It was a comprehensive interview. Every time I speak with a member, whether it be at the federal level or provincial level, I try to ask them exactly what people want to ask them themselves. So
and I agree with you. I agree with you on those 2 points. You absolutely did do that, because she all she could come up with was, well, Patty, this I can tell you, I'm going to listen to everybody. I don't want someone to listen. I want someone to do. You understand what I mean?
Of course.
And I hope she's listening. I hope she's listening, because this nonsense that she's done over the last 4 years, you definitely didn't. I'll tell her right now, you definitely didn't earn the money that you made up there. You had a pretty good salary. Let's earn it for a change, because what you've done over the last 4 years, and the rest of the people that we elected in this province, it was absolutely zero. And I know it because I watch every day. You get up there and you did not defend this province. You did nothing for this province, and yet you're going to go out and get landslide victories. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what people are thinking. But if you want people to work for you, you as Newfoundlanders, you missed out on a good one, because Clifford Small would have been an excellent fisheries minister, an excellent one. And now that's gone.
I appreciate the time this morning, Peter. Thanks for calling.
Okay, no problem.
All the best. Here we go. Final break of the morning and the week. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Executive Director at CADNL, that's Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, Nancy Reid. Hi, Nancy. You're on the air.
Patty, I know we don't have much time. I just would really just like to get a couple of messages out quickly. One, I want to add my voice to the chorus of those thanking our volunteers and from the disability community. I want to say that we recognize that there are so many individuals who formally volunteer, and it's so important to who we are and to our organizations and to the process and to the programs that we can provide. But I also want to give a shout out to individuals who volunteer simply on their own, not a part or affiliated with any of the organizations or the formal places, but to the folks who, give somebody a ride or deliver a meal or clear somebody's lane for the snow. The moments that people provide from their own heart and their own time that really make difference in people's lives is so important. And from the disability community, we know that there are so many of those individuals doing it every day, and I want to recognize that.
Me too. And at this time of year, I also want to say thank you to the volunteers who are out there doing community cleanups.
Yes, for sure. There are so many individuals, and there are opportunities just to recognize the moments that you can share. And when it feels right that this is something that makes sense for me, why not find an opportunity to share those ways? It makes up the fabric of who we are. So I really want to thank you for letting me share that. One other moment, and right now, of course, this going back to the Liberal Convention that's ongoing right now in the city in St. John's, and with the leadership election that has been ongoing for a few days and ends tomorrow. I really want to just speak to those who are voting in that space, and those who will, to whomever will be elected in that space, whether it's John Hogan or John Abbott. I want you to think about, if you would, persons with disabilities, and recognizing that while that community right now is representing 30% of the population of this province, that's a huge number of individuals. And there are many concerns, varied, all kinds of concerns right across the board. But I think that's really important for our elected members, our elected officials, as well as those who are selecting that person, to really think about how that demographic is being served or considered by those individuals. And, it's certainly worthy of consideration. Again, it's 30% of the population. And that 30% represents people who could become a part, or persons who are not yet in that demographic, but become a part of that demographic at any time. Many of us acquire disability as we get older, but at any point in our lifetime. And so that number, while it represents about 30% today, really is a number that could be any of us. Any of us can be part of that demographic at any time. I think we need to continue to remember that always.
Absolutely, and I've put out that conversation regarding the need for a disability advocate out there many, many times for the obvious reasons. Nancy, we've got just a couple of seconds left if you'd like to clue up by offering whatever you like.
Well, I have one more PSA, and I'll leave it there. There's so many things I could say. This is different, but for persons who are in receipt of the dental program, the federal dental program, if you were made eligible last year, you must reapply or to renew your application. That must be done by June 1st, or you will lose, there'll be an interruption in your service. And in order to do that, you must have completed your 2024 tax return and have your notice of assessment in that space. So again, by June 1st, that application must be done, or you will, have an interruption in the services available to you.
Appreciate the time, Nancy. You've had the last word. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye. Nancy Reid, the Executive Director at the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams. Oh, a happy birthday going out to David Williams. He celebrates his birthday this Sunday, the 4th of May. We will indeed pick up this conversation again Monday morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy weekend. Talk Monday. Bye-bye.